hello, school transportation nation, and Happy New Year. We are back, 2025. Excited to be here with you. This podcast brought to you by TransFinder, the leader in school bus routing software. Just a second, Mr. Ryan Gray is going to be talking with Scott Welle. Now, Scott is a #1 best-selling author and founder of Outperform the Norm. He has got the keynote speech coming up at STN EXPO East in Charlotte, North Carolina. We are really looking forward to that in March. That's March 20th through the 25th. We'll be out there. Guys, about 2.5 months till the conference. Have you signed up yet? If you haven't, make sure and lock in that early bird registration to save $100 while it's still available. Going to be a great conference, great lineup. We've got updated info on our schedule, agenda at a glance online. So I invite you to go to stnexpo.com/east. Go check out the details on everything happening at STN Expo in Charlotte. Mr. Ryan Gray, welcome, sir. Happy New Year. Sounds like you got a little cold you're battling today.
Oh, yeah, I'm battling something fierce, but I think it's the holiday gift that keeps giving. My son has the flu, and yeah, fun stuff. You know, when you have the kiddos, you have all kinds of bugs.
Yeah, that's it, Ryan. Kids do that. The kids do that. You know, back to school. I drop my daughter off at school. They're just hacking away. You know, you're like, oh, joy.
Yep.
Hope I don't find that at home.
Yeah, exactly. Well, we found it at home for sure.
Well, speaking of other things hitting close to home, we have the fires in Los Angeles. Guys, we are located in Southern California, the STN offices. We are safe for the most part. Some team members live out of state. One of our team members, Amy, on the events team was evacuated in Pasadena. So we're keeping an eye on things out here. My wife actually has a business in the Pacific Palisades, which, you know, the community is absolutely just devastated. The fires are still raging. There's like zero containment at the time of this recording, at least for the Palisades fire. So it is... I don't know what to say, Ryan. It is just horrific out there. The ash, the debris, the air quality. People are wearing masks down where we're at. It is just a horrible situation.
Absolutely. As we're recording this, over 28,000 acres burned. And this is like 4 different fires. And that's not including one that was up in the Ventura area as well earlier last week. So, you know, thousands of homes. That Palisades fire that you mentioned, that's probably the biggest. The Pacific Palisades High School burned down. So that, you know, in terms of school.
They said the middle school burned down, elementary schools burned down. No, the high school burned down too. All this, like 3 schools.
All of them did. Yeah. So it's just crazy. And you mentioned the soot in the air. Absolutely. You can smell it down here. I mean, we're a good 30 to 40 miles away from these fires. So the Pacific Palisades fire is about 30 miles to the northwest of us. The one started just the evening before we started doing this podcast in the Hollywood Hills. And that's about 30 miles directly north of us. And then you mentioned the one that's affected Amy on our events team. That's the Eaton fire out in the Altadena and Pasadena area. That's about 40 miles away. And then there's another one also about 40 miles away up in Sylmar. So that's kind of on the gateway into the Santa Clarita. So if any of you watch that TV show, Santa Clarita Diet, Santa Clarita is one of those burgeoning bedroom communities for Los Angeles. Lots of people have moved up there. That's where Six Flags Magic Mountain is, actually in Valencia. So Sylmar is just right below that. So there's a big the Hearst fire. So just a lot of devastation. Like I mentioned, thousands of homes. A lot of celebrities, of course, have made the news for their homes that have been burned. But a lot of us regular folks are really hurting out there. And on I think it was Monday, I went out on our back patio, and the soot It was just disgusting. I had to wash off the patio. So, and certainly it's in the air, like you mentioned, Tony. Lots of people walking around with masks. It looks like COVID. Again, I'm wearing a mask because of my health predicament. But certainly with the soot in the air, you have to. Lots of schools closed. The other day, I was listening to the radio, and they were running through the dozens of school districts that were closed. And the radio DJ at one point said, "Hey, it would be easier for us to read the schools that are open at this point because there's far less schools that are open than that are closed." My daughter's school district, it remained open, but they had mandatory inside days. So they had to do their recess and their lunch, everything inside. So definitely the kids have been impacted. Of course, not as badly as those who are in these areas. Thousands and thousands and thousands of people have been evacuated, and it sounds like there's continuing through the weekend as we're recording this. I reached out to a source with Los Angeles Unified School District, of course, the second largest school district in the nation, and a lot of their service area falls in these different fire zones. And this person told me that actually they had just been evacuated and they had just returned home. But school buses had been out and actually assisting in getting employees to their cars who were stranded. So no reports yet of school buses being used for other evacuations, but school buses being used to reunite employees with their vehicles. No damage reported so far. So that is good. But again, LA Unified was closed on basically all week last week. It was closed through Thursday as we were recording this. I told the source I wouldn't be surprised if it was going to be closed again on Friday and probably not open till this week. So all the reports I see show that the fires are going to continue to go on at least through the weekend. So a lot of folks are in pretty dire straits right now, so they need our thoughts and prayers.
Yeah, I've been reached out to by quite a few folks asking how we're doing, the staff, keeping them up to date on everything. Obviously, they know we're in LA. So if you guys know anybody in the Los Angeles area, make sure you reach out, check on them, see how they're doing, just because this is a very catastrophic, apocalyptic almost, Ryan. I've seen it, firestorm. I mean,
biblical. Yeah.
You can't even process entire neighborhoods, communities just absolutely wiped out. It's an emergency preparedness disaster at a scale that almost you couldn't be prepared for. I mean, definitely the governor, Gavin Newsom, even Joe Biden was in town for another purpose, but the mayor of Los Angeles, they're all, on center stage and taking a lot of criticism for their handling of the emergency preparedness, the lack of water, definitely some big things they're going to have to answer for. And definitely from a celebrity standpoint, as you said, they're using their stage via social media to really share their outrage about the lack of the situations, the fire hydrants without water. And it's just really horrific, Ryan. And, I had one person reach out to me and said, it almost feels like, a hurricane hitting Florida, right? The devastation and picking up, but Florida prepared, right? They had been hit so many times. They invested in hurricane preparedness, where California has looked to be caught flat-footed with fire preparedness. And it's unbelievable.
And certainly fires are not something new to California at all. I mean, we are used to fire season, and I think it's the timing, though. We're not used to it happening in the beginning of January. This is more something that happens in the summer, even through the fall. So I think that is something that caught the authorities flat-footed. But yeah, it shouldn't have happened. I mean, you're in California. This is where, we're the land of earthquakes and fires, frankly. And just that lack of preparedness, really needs to be and will be looked into. It'll be investigated for sure. But certainly, just the latest reminder to to be vigilant, to be prepared, to just, train and be prepared for the worst case scenario, because it could and will happen.
Yeah, and one has to think, Ryan, with all those schools getting destroyed, where do the students go? How do they get to school? I mean, we talk about homelessness. This is homelessness as a result of a natural disaster, right? So we're talking about what's that impact to children? How does that impact schools? Obviously, this is hyper local in the LA area. Doesn't mean a natural disaster couldn't hit anywhere else in the country. Just maybe a little unlikely in certain places than others. But it definitely an interesting predicament to see what the next steps are here to try to pick up the pieces for the kids in the schools. And you really have to be feeling for all those families in this really difficult time and situation.
Well, unlikely it's going to be virtual. I mean, that really grew and blossomed through COVID. So there's that. I think it's been too soon yet. I haven't seen anything specifically talking about that. I think a lot of these families, especially in those areas, they're dealing with the here and now right now. Their house burned down or they're out of their home. And you got to remember, this is also impacting the teachers and the administrators for those school districts. A lot of them have lost their homes. So I think right now it's just too soon to know. But certainly there's the virtual, which brings a new element to this, where you don't have to have a physical classroom anymore. At least, it's preferred. And there's been all these studies that have showed the education gap that happened during COVID. So it's not preferred, but there are some potential solutions, or at least options. So it'll be interesting to see how this all unveils itself.
All right, well, changing gears, the new year brings new things happening, and we have released our brand new January edition covering more light duty situations with van services, pros and cons, right? We're looking definitely at that in January. And then also we released our 2025 Buyer's Guide, Best of 2025. If you guys haven't seen it, go to stnonline.com to check out and download the magazine. Before we dive into some of that info, we got a quick message. Hey guys, what do software, hardware, and safety have in common? One word: TransFinder. At the STN EXPO in Reno, TransFinder won 3 Innovation Choice Awards voted on by STN EXPO attendees for best software, best hardware, best safety technology. TransFinder's Route Finder plus routing solution and apps, Stop Finder and Wayfinder, are well known in the industry. Not everyone realizes TransFinder provides hardware like card readers, tablets, and mounts. And as for safety, Patrol Finder for schools is TransFinder's latest solution designed to make buses and campuses safer. TransFinder's president and CEO, Antonio Civitella, said the recognition means so much because it's voted on by STN EXPO attendees. Civitella said, "We know a lot is riding on TransFinder because a lot is riding on those yellow buses that travel through our communities. TransFinder must continue to innovate as more is being expected of transportation departments from district leadership as well as parents." Learn more at transfinder.com. That's transfinder.com. All right, so we're back. Ryan, why don't you break down the numbers? I know we talked a little bit a few episodes ago about the OEM numbers, the production data, down marginally, right? And definitely we've seen upticks in gasoline. We saw kind of a little bit of an uptick in propane. Electric remained relatively flat. Big decrease in CNG relatively because the numbers are small already. Diesel seemed to be the leader as usual, but a decline in diesel in terms of purchasing, a decline in Type D as well, and a little bit in Type C, but definitely an interesting breakdown of data.
And there's a big increase in Type A. So going right along with the January issue where we talk about vans, and there's the driver shortage. And for a long time now, or for many years now, a lot of readers have been telling us that they have been opting for more Type A's because they can bypass the CDL. so it's easier for them to get drivers behind the wheel. So I think that's at play. Certainly a big increase when it comes to that, and I think that's what plays into the lower numbers for Type C specifically. Electric remained kind of flat. It was only very marginally up. I mean, by a relatively a few. So it'll be interesting now with the new administration, the Trump administration, set to take office here in a matter of a week or so. How that will continue to evolve. Will there be any changes to the EPA Clean School Bus program? I reached out to the EPA. I've mentioned this before a couple years ago when I believe it was the House flipped to the Republicans, and they said, "Oh, it's in law. Money's already going out. It's not going to change." We're halfway through the program, and it'll likely stay its course. But you never know. We'll have to wait and see. We just don't know what we don't know. And but the talk has been, of course, drill baby drill. I think Trump has softened that a little bit. He says that electric makes sense where it makes sense, and I think that resonates with a lot of people in the school bus world. It works where it works, and where it doesn't, it doesn't. And so the industry needs options. And we know that propane had been one of those big options, but now there's only, again, one provider. So we saw propane continue to dip. Electric is basically number 3 behind gasoline and diesel. And gasoline, largely Type A's. There were some Type C's. But again, with Bluebird now only doing propane, they're the only ones that are offering gasoline. So we're going to see, will we see, increase in diesel amid all of the court cases and everything going on with the California Air Resources Board, what they've been trying to do. It will be interesting, and it was of note. I think we had an article on it, Tony, last week, that EPA extended its December 9th deadline for its 2024 rebate program to January 12th. So that now has passed, but you wonder what's the real story behind that. I have not gotten any response from them yet. But in their email where they announced that, they said that they were extending the period to gain more industry stakeholder feedback. Don't know what that means. That's very vague. Is that feedback just that there aren't enough applications? We'll find that out, because EPA has to be very transparent to Congress on how that program is going. So it will be interesting.
One other notable item, Ryan, I know last week we saw Thomas Built Buses rolled out a press release unveiling their next-gen electric school bus, the Julie, with the new Accelera 14XE e-axle. So we've been prognosticating when we would see an e-axle product enter the school bus market, and guys might remember Meritor had a product called Blue Horizon, and then Cummins had acquired that business, and it looks like it's been rebranded, probably engineered with some of that technology as part of it into this Thomas Built Bus second generation Julie. So very interesting to see the electric market advancing, changing. So we'll see what it does. It talks about an 800 volt Proterra battery system that improves startability, gradability, and acceleration. So ideal for diverse terrains, including hills and mountains. And the upgrade also supports the integration of AC, heaters, other essential features, not compromising performance, which, that's always a concern. if by having electric doesn't impact other systems on the bus. So they're saying this does not. So very interesting to see new technology advancing. So maybe with Mr. Trump taking office, school buses make sense. We'll see if the funding continues. I know I wrote in my article in the Buyer's Guide that I thought this was a once in a lifetime opportunity with that clean school bus funding from the federal government of the $5 billion. As you mentioned, still a couple of $1 billion left in the program. We'll see what the take rate is for school districts to jump on this money. It's definitely been refined and refined and refined. And it's become more difficult for districts to meet the test to acquire these funds. So you put up a big wall and a big moat. I think many people are going to be discouraged from applying. So we'll see how it shakes out, Ryan, but quite interesting to see the market evolving and the product mix evolving for sure.
Absolutely. And I'm interested to see this new LCD digital dash on this second generation Julie. So that sounds pretty cool. So it's going to be a wider range of visual information for the driver, and they'll be able to see their diagnostics and operational data. So certainly when we've been talking about the school bus of the future and the school buses adopting more of what we're seeing in the passenger vehicle industry and in terms of the accoutrement, if you will, the bells and whistles and the features. And we always know in school buses, all this stuff always hits trucks first and trickles down, but definitely when you have a player like Thomas Built Buses, and they're backed by Daimler, one of the largest heavy, medium, and heavy duty truck manufacturers in the world. And Thomas has really they were one of the first, I guess, to unveil electric. They weren't the first, and they did want to wait. And I remember when they were unveiled the Julie out at NAPT before COVID. I remember then President Keely Edgerly said that we want to take our time. We know that this is the future. We want to get into the game, but we also want to make sure that we do it right. And that's been echoed by a couple of other OEMs. And so here we are. We already have the second generation, and it'll definitely be interesting to see what the take rate is. And hopefully we get to see this, Tony, out in Charlotte.
Most definitely, Ryan. I know when TJ Reed, the new president, CEO of Thomas Built Buses, was on with us, and he's also the head of FCCC, Freightliner Custom Chassis, he was basically saying exactly what you mentioned, which is we're drawing from the truck business. We're drawing the R&D, the dash, a lot of the components that you're seeing in our high-end trucks. That's going to matriculate to our school buses. So again, thank you to the trucking industry for making school buses better, right? That is just the fact of the matter. IC Bus with International Motors, and now you have Daimler Trucks with Thomas Built Buses. These are strategic advantages for these two companies to have available these technologies. So really cool to see our industry advancing, the technology advancing, moving forward. So yeah, we'll see how it plays out. One OEM that's gone quiet, Ryan, is Lion Electric. We have not seen any news headlines since the end of December. So I know they were seeking bankruptcy protection, creditor protections. So I guess we'll see what happens there. Things do not look good. I know a lot of their staff are out looking for jobs, social media. There are a lot of people looking for work. And so lots of good people out there. And this is a matter of, will they get scooped up, and where do people land? But definitely changes ahead, Ryan.
Lots of people out there. Yeah, they've been in the school bus industry in one way, shape, or another for a long time. And they know this industry, so I'm sure they'll get gobbled up quick. But yeah, you're right. Lion was adamant that they're not bankrupt, but they kind of, Canadian law has a little bit different of a way that they deal with bankruptcy up there. Yes, we have not seen anything new. I would imagine that it doesn't look good unless someone comes in and buys them. And we, again, have not seen any movement for the last 3 weeks. So, it remains to be seen, but it's interesting. First Student announced that they're going to come and jump in and they're going to help support the warranties for Lion Electric, and been trying to get some more information from them on that. And the holidays happened, and so I wasn't able to get anything. But I'm trying. But I want to know more about that. And so certainly, if you are a Lion customer, I've talked to a couple of you out there, and I know that you all have been getting correspondence from Lion telling you that you're okay, you're not going to be left hanging in the wind with your vehicles. But certainly, if you are a Lion customer, would love to hear from you. Reach out to me, Ryan at stnonline.com, and let us know how this is impacting you guys.
Wonderful. Some great updates today, Ryan. Really looking forward to your conversation with Scott Welle coming up next.
All right, School Transportation Nation, let's welcome to the podcast stage our very first guest for 2025, Scott Welle, our keynote, planning to come out to Concord, North Carolina in March. He's going to be speaking at our TD Summit on March 22nd. If you haven't been a part of that and you're a transportation director, you need to look into that information. Head over to stnexpo.com, click over into East or West for that matter, and learn more about what the TD Summit is. But Scott then will be coming back the next day and providing our keynote. So it's all around outperforming the norm. And there's a definite sports tie-in here, Scott. So a lot of our readers and attendees will remember our good friend Ross Bernstein from several years ago. He is a sports journalist, really written, I don't know how many books he's written. You take it from a different stance. You are a psychologist, a sports psychologist, correct?
Mm-hmm.
What does that what does that look like? A lot obviously around sports psychology, but how does it tie into the business world, to school transportation?
Yeah, so I do know Ross. I know Ross well. We are both tortured Minnesota sports fans, so we share that similarity in common. But I really come at it from more of a psychology of peak performance. So way back in the day, my master's degree was in sports psychology. Started out working with high level and elite level athletes on what it takes to be able to train and compete at that highest level. And I don't necessarily do that kind of work now. I work more with business leaders, and I typically do somewhere between 55 and 65 different keynote speeches and workshops every year, just on outperforming the norm, on leadership, on goal achievement, on peak performance. And I think the big thing that I would like for people to probably understand is, or for people listening, they might be saying, well, okay, Scott, what the heck does this have to do with me? Like, I'm not an elite, I'm not a professional level athlete. And trust me, neither am I. But what you actually come to realize is so many of the same set of skills and principles, many of which we'll talk about in North Carolina, such as the ability to set and achieve goals, the ability to, I think, be gritty and motivated and disciplined, the ability to focus our time and energy on not just stuff that has us busy and kind of going through the motions, but the things that are actually impactful and make us productive. The ability to, I think, get up if we've been knocked down. So many of those things that high-level athletes go through on the court or the course or the field or the ice, I promise you, are the same exact things that will allow us to be our individual best on the field of play of what you do with school transportation, or just the field of play of life. So really, those are the things that I hope to share with the people there. And it's going to be a heck of a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to it.
Right. Well, I think you sell yourself short, because I know you're a marathoner and a triathlete. So you said, "Oh, you're not elite." That sounds pretty elite. I've done a couple marathons. It's tough, but this sounds like it's your shtick. You do it a lot with your brother, I guess.
I do. Yeah. So I think I've ran 15 marathons with my brother. I've run 35 total, done 5 Ironman triathlons, did a 100-mile ultra marathon run. I guess when I say I'm not an elite or professional athlete, it's because I do those things literally just to compete with myself. It's not like I'm winning a marathon or I'm winning an Ironman. I just feel like when I'm up there on stage and I'm talking to people about showing up as their individual best and kind of getting comfortable being uncomfortable. If I'm not living that truth in my own life to some degree, it just feels inauthentic. So it's a standard that I hold myself to. And by no means does everybody have to be a marathoner or a triathlete or anything like that. It's just the way that I choose to express it. And I think it complements a lot of what I do on stage really, really well.
I think you'd be surprised. I think there's a lot of folks I've met that have done marathons or even triathletes, or they're power, award-winning power lifters or whatnot. But what you're talking about is you need to walk the talk.
You do.
Really,
Yep, 100%.
So how did you get into, so obviously you're an athletic guy. What made you back in, Scott Welle's youth or relative youth think this is when I want to get into sports psychology and I want to understand how the mind works and the mental obstacles and how we can knock those down and become the best version of ourselves?
Well, a couple of things. I think first and foremost, to call it what it was going back in the day, and I played golf in college and played at a pretty high level, played football and basketball also in high school, but to call it what it is, I was kind of a head case, I didn't understand that mental game of getting the best out of yourself, of performing under pressure, of being resilient, of generating confidence, of setting and achieving goals. So looking back on it now, I don't think I would have made probably the professional level in golf or in any other sport, but it would have been interesting to see if I could have complemented some of maybe my physical tools with the mental tools, what potentially would have been different. So I think there was certainly a part of looking back and getting into it that was just a self-interest, but it was also the part of when I was looking at what am I going to do and what am I actually going to study with my life. The two things that always really interested me were sports, and then I always found psychology fascinating. Why do we think what we think? Why do we feel what we feel? Why do we do what we do? And it was right around that time, early 2000s, kind of 2001, 2002, that I feel like sports psychology as a profession was probably coming a little bit more to the mainstream and to the forefront. Like there used to be a stigma around it back in the day that if you were a high-level athlete working with a sports psychologist, there must be something wrong with you. Like you must have some weakness or some disorder or something like that. Now, if you watch anybody in the NFL, NBA, WNBA, Major League Baseball, name your sport, they're working with a sports psychologist, not because they have any disorder or deficiency, but really for performance enhancement. So I feel like that interest, as well as it kind of coinciding with the time that it was just becoming a little bit more popular and I think a little bit more acceptable was really what drew me to want to study it and pursue it.
Okay. Performance enhancing doctor, if you will, PED. Different. I know you don't have your doctorate, I don't believe, but it's always I love to play with words and acronyms. But what really stuck out to me when we first came across you, of course, the sports tie-in is very popular with a lot of folks. And what we found with, your good friend Ross in the past was folks that even aren't into sports, they walked out of there thinking, oh, I didn't at first think, oh, what does this have to do with me? To your point earlier, but you see, we're all members of a team in some respects. Your work team, your family team, your friends team, and it's how to manage those relationships as well, isn't it?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, there's so many different things we can talk about. And I think regardless of whether we're talking about individualized peak performance and getting the best out of ourselves, or whether we're talking about it from a leadership perspective. And when I say leadership, I'm hoping everybody gets the part of it that I don't care what your title is. I don't care what industry or what profession you're even in. I try to get everybody to subscribe to the philosophy that they are a leader. It's a difference between an appointed leader and an emergent leader. An appointed leader has a title. They're captain of the team. They're president of the organization. They have a title that makes them an appointed leader, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they're someone that has impact and influence. So I think when we talk about leadership, again, titles or any of that aside, what are some of the things that people actually do? Because we are all part of a team. To be able to motivate and to be able to inspire others around them to maybe want to come with them on their journey to be their best. The whole is greater than the sum of the parts. Like, what are some of those different dynamics that great emergent leaders do differently and better than I think others?
Gotcha. Okay. And another thing that stood out to me too is training. So obviously when you're talking about athletics and professional athletes, college athletes, anybody who is wanting to compete at an elite level or a high level, could be the high school football team or basketball team or whatever. It's training. It comes down to training. And while you're not talking about the physical training and let's go out there and lift weights and do sprints, there is that mental aspect to, so what does that look like in terms of like mental weightlifting or mental conditioning?
Well, they're very transferable skills. And I can speak to every person I've ever worked with in my life, whether we're talking about an athlete or whether we're talking about a business leader, or what I've just observed and experienced with me is that the discipline from doing something in one area transfers over to the discipline of doing something in another area. Now, if you're talking about athletics, you're talking about conditioning and weightlifting, okay, fine. That can transfer over into the discipline that you need, in another arena on another field of play. But I think when we talk about mental conditioning and lifting mental weights, whatever you're doing that requires a certain amount of discipline. And I sometimes think the difference between motivation and discipline is showing up and doing something when you don't feel like it, when it's hard, when it's inconvenient. Doing something to that degree when it's hard and inconvenient and you don't want to do it, that level of discipline then transfers over and carries over into whatever other area of your life you're looking to apply it.
Gotcha. And I know we were talking earlier, I don't want you to give away the farm, but is there something you can say or just maybe tease the listeners out there who are either registered for STN EXPO East or thinking about it? What is that? What are you going to unlock or try to with them in terms of like mindsets? And say they don't have that sports background and they don't have that discipline, that learned discipline of weightlifting or running sprints or whatnot. What would you say to those folks?
I guess I'll tease it like this. I truly believe that self-awareness is one of the greatest skills any of us can have in this lifetime. And the way that I explain self-awareness is, Ryan, I know you're a sports fan. Like, I'm a sports fan. And unfortunately, I watched the Minnesota Vikings get beat up by the Detroit Lions last night. But one of my favorite things about watching sports these days, regardless of what sport we're talking about, is when you get to hear athletes mic'd up. Like mic'd up in the heat of competition as far as what they're saying to a teammate, what they're saying to a competitor, what the coach is talking about in the huddle. And I always just say from a self-awareness standpoint, if we were to just mic you up, like as far as what you say to yourself every single day, what would we hear? Because that matters. And I think the starting point to being able to show up as your individual best and then in turn be able to get the best out of others, if you can have the self-awareness to what am I actually believing and thinking and feeling on a day-to-day basis, and then start to get a better understanding of that, now you're in a privileged position and so much of a better position to be able to take different behaviors and in turn get better results. Just from that self-awareness of, okay, what am I potentially thinking, feeling, believing that might either be holding me back or, might be allowing me to be my individual best. I think the norm and a lot of people just aren't really aware of, if they were to mic themselves up, what am I actually even saying to myself every single day? And once you get in touch with that, it's just fascinating and it can unlock a new level of performance and insight into whatever field of play we're talking about.
Awesome. And so like a lot of our speakers, you've written a couple of books as well. You're an author. What are those books? I think one of them is Outperform the Norm, but tell us about those books. Where can the nation find them?
You can find them all on Amazon. I actually have 10 different books out
10.
there, and
Wow.
and they're all outperform the norm. There's outperform the norm for sales, outperform the norm for leadership, outperform the norm daily execution, extraordinary results, outperform the norm for running, for triathlon. I oftentimes just refer to it as, like, you're probably familiar with the chicken soup for the soul, right? Like I always just say it's like chicken soup for the people that want to be their best personally, professionally, or athletically. So you can find links to all those books, audio, print, ebook on my website, or you can find them on Amazon directly.
And what's your website so people can go over and learn more about you?
ScottWelle.com, SCOTTWELLE.com.
Right on. Well, really looking forward to your discussions and being there and partaking. And I think folks are going to really receive your message well, and looking forward to meeting you in person. So thanks so much, Scott. And you have a great day. And thanks again for joining us.
You as well. I appreciate it, Ryan. Thanks so much.
Awesome. So you can, again, learn more about Scott Welle at scottwelle.com. And you can also learn more at stnexpo.com/east, as well as stnonline.com.
A special thanks to Ryan and Scott for joining the episode. Can't wait to hear Scott's keynote at STN EXPO East in Charlotte. Again, guys, mark that calendar, March 20th through the 25th, stnexpo.com/east for that info. Take advantage of our early bird discount. Save $100 on your registration while it lasts. We also appreciate our sponsors, TransFinder. Thank you so much for always sponsoring this podcast and being on there supporting us. Make sure, guys, reach out to our friends at TransFinder and let them know you heard of them. You probably heard of them. They're everywhere. Definitely on the STN podcast. Visit stnonline.com for all this news and analysis on the school transportation industry, the latest magazines, that January 2025 issue, and the 2025 Best of Buyer's Guide. Go check that out. Look at all the data, analysis, trends, survey information. It is chock full of information. The team at STN worked so hard on that publication. So you guys, hope you find it to be an outstanding resource, the ultimate resource in student and school transportation. Guys, we love you. We can't wait to see you next week. Remember, subscribe on this podcast, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you listen to pods. Every week we're here for you, nation. Can't wait. See you next week.